Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope doing well. And today we've got some early box office returns and estimates for The Rise of Skywalker, at least coming out of China. Now, I just want to first start off by saying that some people might look at these numbers and say, "Boom! This means the film is going to flop. This means the film's not going to make $1 billion." But that is not the case, and I'll explain why as we go through the numbers. But as you can see from the headline, China box office, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker crashing and burning in China, beaten by local blockbusters. The J.J. Abrams mega tentpole made for an estimated $250 to $300 million. And again, that is what they think the film was made for. My guess is it's more than that when you take the fact that The Last Jedi cost around $308 million to produce, and there are several reports of reshoots on this film. I would imagine that the overall budget for the film probably is closer to $350 to $400 million. Are we ever going to get a number, even an estimate from them? Probably not, because it probably cost a lot more than they want us to think it did, and that's not even taking into account the amount it costs for marketing, keeping in mind that it probably costs roughly between $600 and $650 to both produce and to market this film, meaning the film, if indeed it takes about 60% of its box office, which is about the standard for many studios for their overall box office returns, means the film needs to make at least $1 billion in order for the film to break even. But as we can see, it is not doing well in China at this point in time. In fact, it's opening in a distant fourth place. A Star Wars movie distant fourth place in China. Now, of course, when you understand China's market and when you understand how poorly Star Wars films have done in China for a long time, this makes a lot more sense. For anyone who might be a more Western audience and we see number 4 at the box office, we think, oh, that means the film is taken everywhere. No. This is just tanking in China, and it's because the Chinese audiences just have never been gravitated towards these Star Wars movies, probably because there is this essential, I would say there's an essential Americanisms to this story. Now, that's not just saying that only American audiences like it, but I do think that this film is definitely going to perform best as far as individual countries go in the United States compared to any other country. And I think that because a lot of these Western ideals and Western thoughts and Western approaches to filmmaking are very much present and always have been present in the Star Wars movies, that has been a giant turnoff for the Chinese audiences, even though they've done everything. Star Wars and Disney have done a lot of things to try and appease too, including adding in characters, giving them the forefront in certain films like Rogue One, and saying, oh, look, you see, we can push for this. Look at us, everybody. Look at all the good we're doing. We're featuring Chinese actors. And the Chinese audiences say, we see what you're doing there, and screw you, and have yet to really show up to any of these films. But as of 5 p.m. local time, J.J. Abrams' Rise of Skywalker had only earned $1.6 million, only enough for a distant fourth place start. According to the live estimates from ticketing service Mayoin, the ticketing company's big database forecast of Skywalker's full run currently sits at a lackluster $17.8 million. If the forecast holds true, Rise of Skywalker is for an almost exponential China come down from both Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, which made $42.5 million, and Abrams' The Force Awakens, which made $124 million in China, respectively. So this film is set to make in total $17.8 million in China. That means by the end of its run. Now, is that the lowest Star Wars film ever? No, that prize goes to Solo: A Star Wars Story, which made, I think, even single digits. That's how poorly that film had done. It was amazing just how bad that film did all over the entire world. But this is still not a good number. The fact that this is coming in well below, incredibly below The Last Jedi, seems to indicate that this film is going to be down everywhere. And so some people might say, oh, but this is just China and they've never liked it. But the problem is that people are being turned off by this series. By the very fact that The Force Awakens made 124, Last Jedi did less than half of that at 42.5, and now we've been cut by another half by $17.8 million projected, that to me says that they are pushing audiences away. And I don't think it's just going to be in China. I think that we're going to see very similar returns in other parts of the world as well. Now, are we going to see half the numbers? Probably not, but I could see easily us having either in the US or in other countries like the UK, lower numbers than The Last Jedi, or at the very least lower numbers than The Force Awakens. And I think that we could see these numbers all over the place. We're already getting several pictures and images of empty theaters from across the country. There are also full theaters across the country as well. That's just the nature of the beast. Anytime you have a giant big budget film that gets put out in over 4,000 theaters, some of them are going to perform well, some aren't. Again, I don't like to dive into the whole conspiracy theory of, oh, but all these empty theaters and it's making money. How is that possible? Well, As I said, when you have a crap ton of theaters and you have none in certain locations, but you have completely packed houses in other locations, you're going to have that type of discrepancy. You're still going to be making a lot of money, but it may not seem like that based on images being shared. Word of mouth for the Disney trilogy is closer, word of mouth for the Disney trilogy closer is tepid to match. Skywalker is scoring a 7.5 out of 10 on Mayoin, 8 on Alibaba, and 6.8 on the fan site. Dubin, the preceding two Star Wars films franchise, while not particularly adored in China, both scored a 7.3 in Juban. So you can see there that this film is definitely not being well received at all in this market, and we still haven't gotten any actual numbers from any other parts of the world. We of course have projections that in the United States, rather in the domestic market, US, Canada, etc., that we're going to see roughly around $200 million. Some are speculating it'll be lower, 175. Some are speculating it could be higher. At this point in time, I honestly don't know what those numbers are going to be. If it comes in lower, I won't be surprised. If it comes in higher, I also won't be surprised, because even though I think this movie is trash, I can see how the marketing campaign for this film is definitely going to drive out the normie audience that don't really pay attention to a lot of stuff on YouTube, don't really pay attention to a lot of the behind-the-scenes politicking, and just want to go to a movie, shove popcorn down their face, and see a giant spectacle on the big screen. And for some people, they're going to be entertained by this film because it is a giant spectacle. Now, I don't think it's a very well done giant spectacle. I think that from an objective standpoint, it is a terrible film. And I know some people have been attacking me in the comments saying, no, there's no such thing as objectivity in filmmaking. Yes, there is. Go watch a movie called The Room, and if you can tell me that film is objectively good, then please shut your damn mouth, because you're an idiot. There is an objective and a subjective standard to all things. Again, there are objective standards by the fact that a film can be well edited, can be well choreographed, can be well shot. These are objective standards. Now, can you have differences of opinion on different objective standards? Absolutely. There might be some people that say, I don't like shaky cam in movies, while others say, I don't like it either, but at the very least, it does serve the purpose of this story. So you can have subjective opinions even in that objectivity. However, you can still also step back and say, you know what? I can appreciate this film for what it was. I can appreciate the fact that it was a well-made movie, but I personally did not like it. I feel that way for a lot of different films that a lot of my friends might like, but I say, you know what? I can understand why you might like it, but I personally did not. Again, objective versus subjective. But what we're seeing very clearly from these early scores, from these early ratings, and of course, even the critics across the world are really hating on this film as well. Last time I checked, the Rotten Tomatoes score is around 58%. I still have a live stream going on the Welcome to Asgard channel, keeping track of it. We now have audience scores, which is around 88% positive, meaning 88% of people leaving scores have left a 3.5 out of 5 stars or higher. If you take the raw total, because remember, now Rotten Tomatoes has 2 fan scores and authentic score, even though there seems to be problems with that, with repeated reviews and such, but also you have a raw score total as well. The raw score total drops it by about 10 points or so, probably even actually 10 to 13 points. It drops it around 75% or so of fans giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Is that number going to go lower? Most likely, because you're going to have people on both sides review bombing the site, because they still allow for review bombing. They just put it into a different category, and so they claim to fix the problem, but all they really do is end up creating a new problem, because that's just what Rotten Tomatoes does. If you look across a lot of different fan aggregates, though, you can see that the film is definitely not being as well received as other films have in the past, and the film overall just is not a well-made movie. Again, it's just not a well-made movie. And so the overwhelming lead weekend for China is Donnie Yen's own franchise finisher, IP Man or Ip Man 4, which I think is hilarious, seeing that someone that was formerly in Star Wars is the one that is totally destroying them in the country that they tried to reach out to by casting him in their movie. I think there's a lot of irony to that overall. But as you can see here, the film is not doing well in China. This film is set to do pretty well here in the domestic market, and probably will do well in other parts of the country. I'll be updating y'all with numbers as soon as they start coming in. Probably not until tomorrow evening or Sunday morning at the very latest, when we actually get the raw, or rather, once we get the actual official box office estimates. I know Disney is going to be holding off on that. Disney is always the last studio to report their box office returns. I would not be surprised if we don't get the numbers for this weekend until like almost noon Eastern time on Sunday, because they're usually very much delayed. I can imagine that if the numbers are not nearly as much as they expected and as much as they wanted, if this does fall 175 or even less than 175, I could see them holding back if their global opening weekend is sub $400 million. Because right now the projection is around $450 million globally. If it's less than that, again, it seems to be likely, seeing that their projections, the early projections for China, had the film making a $20 million opening weekend, and now it's not even going to reach that. Now it's not even going to reach that in its entire run based on these early estimates of just how poorly this film is performing. So if you take that into account and you take into account the other early estimates of the worldwide box office being $450 million, we can assume then that the film is going to also underperform in other parts of the world. Is it a guarantee? Not necessarily, but we can still assume it nonetheless. And I can't wait to see these numbers because I don't think the film is going to flop. Some people might going out there saying, oh, it's going to flop, it's going to flop. It's not going to flop. I think that it is going to make around $850 million at least. Again, I suspect it could be as high as $1.1 billion. It could even be higher than that, to be perfectly honest. Because don't ever underestimate the normie audience. They will go out and see garbage, and they will take that garbage, and they will accept it, and they will, regurgitate it, go see it multiple times. That's just what they do. But the film, I think, honestly, is going to come in well below expectations because we're already seeing that trend happening, at least in one country. And keep in mind, China, for almost every other major box office film, is always the largest share of the foreign total. Because China does not show up for Star Wars, it means it needs to make that money up in other parts of the world. But with fans becoming ever increasingly apathetic to this series and to this franchise, I could see that falling apart very quickly. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about this. Obviously, it's bombing in China. Do you think that the box office is going to see similar returns in other parts of the world? Do you think that we could see a percentage drop? Again, $17.8 million versus the $42.5 of The Last Jedi. Do you think we will see a similar percentage drop in other parts of the world as well? Or do you think this might just be exclusive to China? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, guys, if you want to check out the live update of the Rotten Tomatoes score, please go check out the Welcome to Asgard channel. Go give that a like. I think it's at the 4th stream right now because obviously after 9 or 10 hours, I try to restart it because the first one has not saved at all. It was a 22-hour stream, didn't save because it went over a certain period of time. So now I'm trying to cut it off and restart it every 9 or 10 hours or so. So if you want to go support that, please go ahead and do so. I have that on my other computer running. So if you want to support that stream too, there's ways to super chat. There's ways to donate through that. That way I can keep that thing running for as long as I can. But anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.